Hello and welcome to Warhammer, and welcome to the very first episode of the Black Library Book Club.
Yep.
You're joining me, Dan, with
Jack as your usual guest.
And our special guest,
Alex.
Very nice. We're going to today talk about one of the finest books in the Horus Heresy series from the Black Library, which is 1,000 Suns by Graham McNeill. So stay tuned and we'll dive right in. Right, let's get started and dive right in. Warning up front, if you haven't read the book, you're going to get an awful lot of spoilers. We're basically going to tell you what happens. So pause this now, go and read the book, come back. It's not very long. How long did it take you on there?
Oh, yeah, it's only like an 16 hours.
16 hours on Audible. Yeah, there you go. So let's get straight into it. It starts actually framed with a prologue, which is Ahriman waiting for Magnus to come and kill him because he's made a terrible mistake. And he's kind of recounting what's, this period from his life. While he's waiting to die. So it's got quite a strong opening in that respect.
Yeah.
But then we go straight into the first section of the book. It's actually split into 3 sections, so we'll summarise one each. And the first section, it starts on a planet called Agoru, which has been brought into the Imperium through the Great Crusade. There's a very mysterious mountain there. Magnus is trying to find something that's in the mountain. And the part 1 unfolds. There's a lot of world building, but part 1 unfolds with the story of this mountain and what they uncover within it. And then once that has been achieved, they then move on to, they leave that planet and move on to, Alex?
So the second part of the book starts taking place on Shrike, which is a world coming under compliance, which basically means that, they're going to be killing anyone who doesn't say yes to them.
Yep.
So we get to see the 1,000 Suns teaming up with the Word Bearers Legion and the Space Wolves, and we get to see both of them coming head to head with each other. The main bit being when one of the members of the 1,000 Suns succumbs to the flesh change, which is something they've had for a while, but supposedly Magnus said, Magnus said he'd fixed it. But unfortunately for them, one of the members of the Legion succumbs to it in front of the Space Wolves. And Russ
Not
ends
a
up
good combo.
killing him and then swearing an oath on the Magnus, basically saying, I'm going to get you back in the future for what you've done.
Russ really doesn't like this, and it kind of tees up what happens later in the book, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And then where do we go after Shrike?
So after Shrike is the Triumph of Ulanor, which is the Emperor declaring Horus as War Master of the Great Crusade and him taking all of his stuff and going home and basically saying, I've got a bunch of stuff to do at home, lads. Sort yourselves out.
Yeah.
Horus is in charge. Sort yourselves out. I'm doing my own things.
Yeah.
But before we go, we have something that I need to take care of, which is the Council of Nicaea, which is a big part of the book.
Yeah.
It's known as the Trial of Magnus for a reason.
Yep.
As it's basically almost like half of the whole legions going against Magnus and his legion for their use of psychic powers, calling them sorcerers.
Sorcery, yes, evil sorcery. They're witches.
Warlocks, some would say.
Yeah.
And Magnus obviously trying to tell them that, it's not sorcery. This is going to help the Imperium as a whole.
Yep.
And the ultimate outcome of that being the Emperor banning all forms of sorcery. Well, all of the librarians in every legion.
Bit of a shock for most, to be fair.
He does keep like the astropaths and stuff, but
so he's the greatest psycho in the galaxy, but he bans psychic powers in his own legions, but he's allowing it as for astropaths and navigators. I think use psychic powers as well, don't they?
Out of context seems really weird, but the grand scheme of things, it makes sense.
It does make sense, but
which we'll talk about later.
It makes sense to the reader, but to Magnus and the 1,000 Suns, it's a hard one to bear.
Well, it's their entire legion is using their psychic powers. But yes, after the trial of Magnus, Magnus decides, well, the sod's you, I'm going to go home. Yeah. And he heads where, Colin?
Exactly. He goes back to Prospero, which, they basically go back onto Prospero and just kind of reflect. I think a lot of them go in a bit of depression, really, just because, well, they know that their time's almost coming to an end based on this, because that's what that's what they're there for, really. Now, although it was banned, and the Emperor did say that if you are caught doing psychic, well, you're going to get killed effectively.
He couldn't be more clear, could he?
He couldn't be more clear. But all of them go back and still continue to do it.
And that's from comes from the top, though, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Magnus says we're just going to carry on.
Just going to carry on doing it. There's literally no one really there's no Oscar see no repercussions, but there was
I mean,
later.
they kind of do it secretly, like on their own, and then there's a pivotal moment where Magnus decides he has to use sorcery for the greater good.
For the greater good.
Yes.
Tau.
Do you want to tell us about what happens there?
Yeah, so basically, obviously, they go back to Prospero, and Magnus is foreseeing that Horus is about to betray the Emperor. So Magnus really wants to get in touch with the Emperor in a very unique way, because he could have done it in a different way, but he was too proud to be like, well, I want to go to my father this way. He wants to do it a different way, for a different kind of spell to make him more physical. I think it's very strange.
I think if you'd used like an astropath or something, it would have taken quite a while to get the message across, where he's thinking
his justification needs to happen immediately, doesn't it?
Yeah. Like the Emperor
so he
needs
ends up using massive amount of sorcery which he's not meant to do.
He drains a lot of psychic from a lot of the Thousand Sons to get himself over there. And even when he's over there, he actually can't break down the barrier, but he then borrows some extra power from Tzeentch, which appears looks like, to basically break down this barrier. And when the barriers broke down, the Emperor just looks at him and was like, yeah, I'm so disappointed in what you've just done. And then the story cuts at that point. Then it goes back to the Magnus going back, being pushed back to his physical form back on Prospero. And it's at that point where Magnus knows what he's done. He knows he's messed up. So he, at that point, puts up this massive barrier to stop anyone from basically foreseeing the future, because what comes next is massive, which is the burning of Prospero. Space Wolves descend, Custodes, Sisters of Silence come down, and basically start burning Prospero. After that, they then fall back into I think it's the Pyramid of Potek, I think it's what it's called. And
it's like a last stand, isn't it?
It is a very last stand, and basically two gods collide. Rus arrives on the planet, fights Magnus to try and build as much time as possible.
It's epic.
It's
is
world shattering. Yeah.
Good duel.
Oceans boil, which is absolutely crazy. And then after that, when they battle, unfortunately Magnus loses. I say unfortunately. We can dive into it very soon about why I think it's unfortunate. But anyways, he loses. He loses his back, and as he's about to get killed by Rus, they all then teleport away off Prospero to a planet of the sorcerers, which has already been set up by Tzeentch. So that is kind of where the book ends.
Yeah, it's very much, as you can tell from the summary we've given you, it kind of builds very much up to that last section, which is really climactic. It's loads of action in that, and it ends with the absolute fall of the Thousand Sons, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that's the book so far. So I think we all need to answer the most important question of this entire book: did Magnus do anything wrong? Everyone's still after this book, it's been a bit like, did he do anything wrong? I think for me, anyways, the main thing is that he done nothing. That's what got me. He knew what he had done. He knew he'd basically signed everyone off to their death, and he knew what was coming, and he just said, I can't do anything. This is what they wanted. They want me to get involved.
I mean, it's been a meme for a long time.
Yeah.
Magnus did nothing wrong, but he did. In my opinion, he did a lot wrong.
Several things wrong.
I read one of the reviews about this book on Goodreads, and somebody said instead of being called 1,000 Sons, it should have been called 1,000 Bad Decisions.
Yes,
and you could argue
yes.
You could argue that what Magnus starts his journey full of good intentions, but it's about how his decisions to try and make those intentions become real or manifest are always the wrong decisions. But I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that would be a sympathetic view of Magnus. I think this book is very similar to the old Greek parable of Icarus, the guy that flies too close to the sun.
Yeah.
He's full of hubris and arrogance. He believes that he doesn't heed any of the warnings from Ahriman, doesn't heed any of the warnings from his father or his fellow Primarchs.
Yep.
He believes that he knows
what's best.
He thinks he is the supreme being, I think.
Yeah.
As much as he professes in this book, I love my father, or don't you say this about my father, or my father is effectively a god. You do get the feeling throughout it that he feels he almost knows better than his dad.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So in my view, this book, before this, I was willing to accept that there was maybe a grey area. The book has actually cemented my view that I think he did a lot wrong.
Yeah, I agree.
Then over to Team Tzeentch. Oh, no.
Yeah. Our resident Thousand Sons player here.
I know, but I can't help but not say clearly he didn't do anything.
Oh, you get out of here, right?
Obviously,
1,000
all he wanted
players.
to do was
Sympathizer.
He just wanted to warn his dad about what had happened. Did he deserve his entire planet being razed to the ground?
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't. We know now. Obviously, Russ had been told to go back and capture him.
Yeah.
So, it was Horus who had told him to destroy the Legion.
Yeah.
But still, was it?
Because it was two different orders, wasn't it? Because the Emperor said to go get him, but
Yeah.
then I think Horus then intervened and said no.
Yeah.
You don't
terminate with extreme prejudice.
Yeah.
you don't know that in the book, obviously.
Mhm.
So in the book, it's just, Magnus is awaiting what's going to happen, and he knows that they're coming to kill him, and just doesn't warn anyone. But in terms of did he do anything wrong? If we take the meme out of it,
Yes, he did.
He did quite a bit wrong,
Yeah.
and he definitely deserved a lot of what he got.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the book is. I mean, the whole of the Horus Heresy as a narrative arc is a tragedy, but this is one of the biggest tragedies within it. I think.
It's one of the pivotal moments,
Yeah,
I think, as
yeah.
well. That barrier, if that barrier didn't break, then
Yeah, so Magnus, in order to go and warn the Emperor, he uses this incredible amount of sorcery
that he has himself.
but he has to break through a psychic barrier that the Emperor's put around Terror.
Yeah.
That basically, if I remember correctly, it kind of removes some of the Terror's defenses. Is that right?
Yeah, because it's basically stopping the demons from basically getting into Terra.
Right,
So
yeah.
that barrier is set up to basically stop all these powerful beings from actually getting in. And then Magnus is kind of punching this barrier down, but he can't get through. And then he calls out to the warp, the big, what's called is the ocean.
Yeah, the
Great Ocean. He calls the warp. Yeah.
And he just calls out randomly, and he's like, "Oh, I need power." And then this being of what is very described of just a very calm and helpful being is like, "You can have some of my power.
Yeah.
I don't want anything from this. I'm not going to benefit from this."
Yeah.
And then obviously we know that. Well, it's not referenced in the book, but that's Zinch, right?
Yes.
Zinch has given him power.
Yeah, there's a
to
lot
break
of
it down.
there's a lot of sort of notes about many eyes and an ever shifting form, stuff like that. You can get a rough idea of it. Is it Zinch? Is it just a very powerful greater
the
demon?
word change is
be.
used
Yeah.
around it as well. I
Yeah.
mean, the hints, the breadcrumbs are all there to lead you to the fact that it's Zinch, and that is who Magnus had borrowed the power from or done a pact with to protect his legion from the flesh change as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
So yeah, there's a history there,
Yeah.
and yeah, but that his father couldn't be any more clear. The Emperor's like it's like telling your kid, don't put your finger in that plug socket.
Yeah.
Let the
Yeah.
kid go.
except
Again, obviously I know we're saying Magnus did all these things, and I get it, he did all these things that led up to this moment, but should he have been told what his plan was with the Emperor?
This book is a brilliant example of how the Emperor is fallible. So and the author is really good, I think, in terms of looking at if you look at the conquest of Shrike, he doesn't pull any punches there about how genocidal the Space Wolves are, how fundamentalist the word bearers are, and how the Thousand Sons are trying to actually preserve this knowledge, and then and the Space Wolves want to destroy it because it's not Imperial culture, and also how the Imperium then propagandizes the people that are left to try and persuade them that they're better off than they were before, when they clearly aren't.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't pull any punches in terms of in that respect, in saying how the Imperium is flawed, but also how the Emperor is flawed. He doesn't tell his sons about his Webway project. If he told Magnus, he could have avoided loads of this. If he'd stood up to the anti-Psyker faction in the legions and explained to them, this power basically is safe to use if it's done in the right way.
Yeah.
Then he would have also avoided a lot of this.
I think it's just that gaping hole of just tell me, what's the plan, basically? We looked obviously the trial of Magnus, where all them legions came forward and was like, look, no, where are all the chief librarians of all of our, the Ultramarines, Salamanders, had some really high profile ones.
I think the leading one is I think it's a White Scar.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they're all like, yeah, look, it's good. We need it. We need to be here. And then it was just a bit of a shock, I think, to Magnus to be like, nah, no more use of this.
Yeah.
And that's that's part of the tragedy is Magnus's intentions, and you see it's framed in part one and beyond that of the book in terms of Ahriman is given one of the remembrance as a normal human who has psychic powers, and to try and train him and protect him from the dangers of the warp, ironically. Yeah. But it's part of Magnus's greater plan to kind of elevate or evolve humanity through to bring humanity's psychic awareness up, if you like.
Yeah, like being a normal human, it's all right, but look at everything we can do. Like,
I think he sees it as a next step of evolution. This is where humanity's meant to go.
Absolutely.
And so again, it comes back to those intentions. Like he has the Thousand Sons, particularly because through Ahriman's eyes that you see that, and his relationship with Lemuel, you can see what they were trying to do. And even on their planet in Prospero, like the capital city there is an example of what the Imperium could have been. It's a center for learning and development, etc.
I mean, it's like a paradise, isn't it?
Yeah,
Prospero,
it is.
Kind of like in the name as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it gets burned to the ground.
They lose a lot of text that day.
And there's a passage in the at the Council of Nicaea where Magnus kind of warns them, like, if they turn away from this philosophy and ethos of learning and trying to evolve and improve, then the Imperium will become very insular and dark and regressive. And that's exactly what happens.
Yeah. He's entirely right, really.
Yeah, he is.
That
So
sense.
in that respect, he is right. Yeah, absolutely.
I think one of the good things to mention as well, obviously, when I know we're all blaming like kind of Magnus here, I think it's the stark difference between Magnus and Ahriman is that Ahriman's like, no, we need to fight, or like we need to protect ourselves. And it's so strange to see, because you think that obviously, that's his father, isn't it? Normally he follows everything, but he's actually going against Magnus at that point in the book, and it's quite nice to see.
Yeah, it's nice to see some of the sons not just roll over backwards for their dads, for their Primarchs. They're very much willing to, and Magnus has fostered this in his legion. He's allowed them to think and go their own way and do their own thing.
The author uses that to kind of build the reader's sense of unease, because it starts in section 1. We see Magnus initially through Ahriman's eyes, we don't actually see the world, the perspective of Magnus, until we actually get into the mountain. It's mainly through Ahriman's eyes, and he sees him like in absolute awe. He's in awe of his father. And then the humans that are with him, the remembrances, it's almost like a religious experience when they see Magnus, fall to their knees weeping. But then as it progresses, Ahriman starts to question some of Magnus's decisions, or he catches him in a lie at one point, and Magnus is just like, "Don't you ever mention that again."
Yeah,
and it builds that sense of unease that maybe Magnus is on. You start to realize that Magnus increasingly is on the wrong path, and he's actually betraying some of his own principles because of this.
Yeah. So I think overall, we do kind of think, or all agree to some extent, that Magnus did a lot of things wrong.
He
did a lot of things wrong.
It's the whole book for me. Yes, I have very little sympathy for Magnus. I mean, apart from the fact he's got massive daddy issues, but all the Primarchs
they all do. Yeah, they all do.
And with a dad like that, who wouldn't? But the figure I think did very little wrong, perhaps, is Ahriman in that book, but Magnus definitely does a lot wrong.
Yeah, maybe in his next book he does a lot of things wrong.
And Lehman Russ also does a lot wrong. I mean, it doesn't hide from that fact either. Is Russ, you couldn't ask for a more of a clash of personalities and styles than between Russ and Magnus.
Definitely.
And Russ has to take some of the blame.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Well, if we've all just finished discussing Magnus and how we've done everything wrong,
not all.
Not all. Okay.
Alex is clinging on.
I love how you've been thinking. You're like, wait, how can I defend him? I can't defend him.
He's all right.
Okay,
all
right.
I mean, before we move on, I just want to briefly say this is like a part of two. This is one of two books that were written. I think this is a phenomenal achievement. Like the two authors wrote the same story from two perspectives.
Yeah.
So this is a perspective of the Thousand Sons, and then there's a companion book called Prospero Burns, which is written by Dan Abnett, which tells the same story from the Space Wolves.
Yeah,
and they wrote them together to make sure that they paralleled each other.
Yeah, so they got everything right at the same time.
But I was expecting, because this one was the Thousand Sons, I was expecting it to be a bit more sympathetic towards Magnus than it actually was. Yeah. I don't think the author is very sympathetic to him at all, because he's obviously not going to get a lot of sympathy from the Space Wolf perspective, is he?
Oh, no.
So that surprised me, but he definitely. They were not meant to think that Magnus was innocent. I don't think.
No, no. Well, the book itself, then, getting on to the actual review. How did everyone read the book? Did you read it? Did you listen to it?
So mine was on like a Kindle.
Yeah,
I got it on that and did it that way. I think that's like one of my first real books I've actually read on that. And normally I've got a physical copy like that.
Yeah.
But I was reading on a Kindle, and it all worked fine as well. Quite enjoyed it. Yeah, I had no issues with it.
Very nice, very nice. Dan, what about you?
I read it old school. Read the paperback, borrowed off a friend of mine at a local gaming club, the West Allotment Wildlings. They're actually building like their own version of the Black Library so that members can borrow books, which I think is a lovely idea.
Very nice.
It's a good book. I mean, tell us how you read it, consumed it first, and then we'll get into how our takes.
Well, it's quite nice actually, because I think we're all different. Because I listen to it on Audible instead. I just find listening it a lot easier. You know, you're whacking on when you're driving, or just reading the book. It takes me ages, and I feel like when I'm reading it, I might read a few chapters, not pick it up for like maybe a day or so, and then I come back and I'm like, what on earth has happened? And for me, Audible's just got like a little like rewind button for like 30 seconds. So I just hit that a few times. And I'm like, right, I'm all caught up. So it's easier to pick it up.
The people that read the Black Library books are usually really good on Audible as well, aren't they? So that's why, like, for me, I just find it more engaging, because when they change like the voices that's going on, it's easier for me to pick up. All right, perfect, someone else is speaking now. So when I'm reading it, I get to the end like, oh, such and such said. I'm like, oh, that person was saying it. I'm like, oh god,
I had a voice in my head for this guy, and that doesn't work. I've got to go back and do it now with the other voice.
Exactly. What about like getting into the book itself? Because it's a big book. I know what it was book 13 in the Horus Heresy. Yeah. Did you guys find it weird picking it up from book 13?
I mean, we're in an interesting position with the Horus Heresy, because if you know anything of the lore, it's like going to watch a movie after you've already read the book. We all know roughly what's going to happen. You know, we know how this story ends.
Yeah.
So it's very much the author has to be superb at taking you on that journey to keep you engaged, because otherwise, it's predictable, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think in that respect, the author does a very good job. I did find it engaging. I did find it, I'm not going to lie, hard to get into. I think we all experienced something similar, didn't we?
Yeah, that first chapter, like the first book, it does drag a bit at the beginning, it felt like. I mean, I know there's a lot of introductions for characters and the Legion itself, the remembrances that we get used to, but it did feel like it took a while. Ugoru was one of the tougher parts of the book to read in a sense because of that. But the rest of the book, for me, just got so much better.
It was like it was going downhill, wasn't it? It was like it started off slow, but when it picked up momentum, it just continued to go.
Yeah.
It was like the last like 2 hours for me on Audible. I could pick that up again there now and re-listen to the Burning of Prospero. It was just an unreal section.
All I would say is well worth sticking with. So if you
do
open it and you struggle with the first few chapters, stay with it, because it picks up in part 2, and part 3 is phenomenal.
It just skyrockets from there, basically. But yeah, for me, it took about 4 or 5 chapters to actually start like getting into it and actually wanting to listen to it, because I think I started listening to the first couple and I was like, okay, like I know it's world building and like the names are getting popped about, but some of them names they weren't really sticking with me too well.
There's a large cast of characters that's introduced. The author doesn't patronize you or give you an easy ride in the first half. He's like, I'm going to world build here. I'm going to world build the wider world. I'm going to world build Agoru, where this takes place. Yep. And I'm going to introduce an awful lot of characters and an ensemble of characters, and you're just going to have to try and deal with it.
Yeah.
And in that respect, it is a challenge, but you can see later on in the book why it had to be done that way. You know, it has to introduce all of these people for a reason.
Yeah. What did you think about like not getting spoon fed? Because a lot of it, there was not a lot of not so much detail, but there wasn't a lot of like, this is why it's happening. This is what's going on. It was more like, this has happened. This is what's happening now. Crack on.
Yes, and some of it, like I said, is a lot to take in. Like you're dealing with different sects within the Thousand Sons Legion. There's different levels or stages of their psychic powers. They use this thing called the enumerations to or remunerations
to calm themselves and sort of like get themselves ready for a battle and that.
Yeah, so there's an awful lot going on there, and some of it I had to go back and look at it again. I'm not going to lie, and just the sheer volume of people that he introduces is a challenge. I mean, you when we were talking about this before recording, you hit on a very good point that this probably could have been a different section or a smaller.
Yeah, it felt like you did need quite a bit of it, because you need to know who these people were, and you know, by introducing them, you can obviously get that more relationship as it goes through the entire book. But it did feel like you maybe could have cut out a third, maybe even half of their time on Agoru, and just kind of had something else going on, maybe a little bit longer on Shrike. so we could see all the legions working together, or something.
There are definitely some occasions where the pacing is slightly off like that. I'd fully agree. Like Shrike fascinated me, and then it's over and done with. And I'd really like to know more about this.
Mm-hmm. I found it really interesting, the whole like the fact that they've got this flame that's ever burning and stuff, and these weird bird-like people, and it's like, oh, these guys are like whooping space marines and like killing Terminators. It's like, oh wow, these guys must be really cool, and then you're done in like couple chapters.
Yeah.
That's it.
The thing I got for me as well, it was that they kept referring obviously to the mountain. And I was like, it's just a mountain. Like, kept on saying, oh, what's in this mountain? What's in this mountain? And it was like this mountain turned into like a warlord titan, didn't it? At the end.
No, so it was...
It's Guardians of the Mountain, yeah.
Yeah, so there was obviously this big mountain, which I thought... I was trying to think at the time. I was saying, I wonder if this is Necron. I thought, like, because it was black, there was a weird resonance to it, and I thought, ooh, is this like a Necron monolith that's come up?
Dull psychic abilities, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I thought it was that, and then when they got a bit closer, like they moved past the mountain and got to this area with these large, what they think at first is these huge statues, and it goes on to describe them all, and as it started describing them, I was like, these sound like Eldar, like Titans, like Wraith Knights and stuff, and then... Eventually they start moving, and nicely in my one anyway, there was a picture of it. And so there was actually a picture, and it was Eldar Wraith Knights.
I didn't have that.
Which I thought was really handy, because I was picturing in my head, and I was like, oh, is that what it is? And then there was a few pictures throughout the book. But that was one of them that really stuck with us, because I was like, oh wow, they're fighting like Eldar Wraith Knights, and I thought, oh god, they're fighting Eldar Wraith Knights, and there was a lot of the Legion and some Land Raiders and Magnus, but still it was like
took a lot.
I mean, nearly killed Magnus.
Well, it took him one punch to take down one of them, and then he was like, I'm beaten. I'm tired. Like,
he basically gets his life saved by one of his captains, doesn't he, Magnus?
Yeah,
Magnus protects him from the second one. But I mean, that battle was pretty cool. But I can see in terms of like, I don't want to get into like paint myself into a huge corner here, but there's a lot of the whole of Agora in the mountain is like its symbolism. Like the people of Agora wear a mask. The planet's quite barren and featureless. It's all about hidden secrets, really. You know, what's behind this mask, what's behind what's in the mountain. Yeah, and that's where it gets interesting. It's a question of whether could they have got to that bit a bit quicker.
Yeah, definitely.
I do find that one thing interesting though, that you had the picture of the Wraith Knight. I think that would have really helped with me. I know obviously I listened to it on Audible, so obviously I didn't have time to look at the pictures, but my understanding was that it was like almost like the mountain that was moving, not so much the Guardians of the Mountain. So I must have missed that one.
Yeah, it's easily. I mean, it's easily done, but there's no pictures in the paperback. So to me, they were. I had no idea that they were Eldar.
Oh, there's no pictures in the paperback either. No, because I would have thought like my one being I'm pretty sure from Black Library as well. I would have thought it would have been the same.
Thing,
It just shows my complete lack of imagination that I didn't make that connection.
I think it was. I'm trying to remember what it was. There was some talk of like the sleek. I think it was like maybe the sleekness of it. And I'm thinking, I was like, there's something else about these here, and the way they moved and stuff. I was like, oh, this sounds
more like elegant.
Yeah, I think they were described almost as like bone-like some of the structure, and I was like, is that like like you're saying, Wraith bone and such.
So what set them off? Like, why were they dormant? Did the book get into that actually?
I think they were almost like corrupted, weren't they? They had these strange tentacles around them.
Yeah, these black tentacles that are coming out of the pit.
Yes,
I mean it's very much a sort of primal fear of, and the author acknowledges this, like it's almost I would say like Cthulhian in terms of like it's a big tentacled black monster in a pit.
Yeah,
but it's because it's portrayed that way because that is the sort of primitive nature of the people of Agora, and that's how they envisioned it. It kind of manifests. It's like Ghostbusters with Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. The God manifests as the people imagine it. So once we get into the mountain and Magnus discovers that the webway then the Eldar connection made sense. But it took me a long time to get there.
Yeah, see, it's really interesting, the three different perspectives. Like we all thought almost different things there from an Audible. What was it? What were you listening to? Your
like
physical
paperback.
What was yours?
Like Kindle.
Kindle, very nice. See, well, next maybe topic then that we want to maybe talk about is favorite characters in this book, because there's lots of them in here. There are. Alex, which ones do you want to start off with?
Well, for me, I got a few, but I'll be nice and bland here. And, definitely my favourites in the book. Magnus, obviously.
Course,
I mean, he's, he's such a massive character in all of this. He's a main character without having a lot of chapters devoted entirely to him.
The other does a fantastic job of just giving him that real sense of presence and charisma. He feels like a demigod, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah. He just, the entire time he's out there, he's powerful when he needs to be.
Yeah.
You know, and you get to see, like you were saying, this fall from grace he almost has, that arrogance that keeps showing up. I just really enjoyed whenever he was in the book, kind of seeing how he changed just slightly from chapter to chapter.
Well, what I noticed is that, like, at the very start, he was always very this calming presence. You know, he was there and he kind of reassured his people. And then when he also appeared with Ahriman, and was it not Camille? It was Lehman, I think it was called.
Lemuel,
that was the one where Lemuel was getting trained by Azek, and then Magnus just appears and was like, "Oh, this isn't my story to tell." Whilst Magnus starts then telling a story of himself, which was really interesting. So it was quite nice to see that. But then as the time went on, Magnus just wasn't either there. Again, during the burning of Prospero, he wasn't there. But then when he does appear, he didn't give this aura of reassurance. He was like, "Right, I'm here to kick ass," basically. So I think Magnus was a staple in this book.
He's a huge character in it, and his fall tracks the fall of the Legion. You know, they're absolutely interlinked, aren't they? Intertwined. But he's you get to see lots of different facets. It's good writing. You get to see lots of different facets of his character. You see him at the beginning, as Jack was just saying there, in terms of his almost the godhead of the Legion. Yeah. You see him in terms of his vision for humanity, and but then you also see the other side of him in terms of his deceit. His arrogance, and his absolutely atrocious decision making, his hubris. So, but he is, you know, he's the big character in the book.
Yeah, definitely. I think the other one, I mean, again, nice and bland, but it is Ahriman. Like,
it's got to be. Right?
You know,
he's a great character.
He's a chief librarian of the Thousand Sons. Yeah. So obviously he's going to have a lot of chapters to him. I mean, like I said, the prologue is him.
Yes. Yeah. It's a lot of the book is seen through his eyes.
It was almost his book, you could argue, because he was in it the majority of the time, and a lot of decisions that were made were almost because of him. You know, the book was because of him.
He was the chief defender, really, of Prospero in the end. Yeah. And throughout the book, you see him willing to talk back to his Primarch more and more as well. He certainly starts going against him, especially around the council when he gazes into Magnus.
Yes, he does.
And sort of sees what he's done. Yeah. That's very much Ahriman's last moment of, oh, actually, you're a bit of a bastard.
Yeah, exactly.
He actually gets a glimpse, and Magnus catches him getting a glimpse of one of Magnus's deepest secrets, which is about his pact with Tzeentch, really, isn't it? Yeah. Magnus plucks that memory back out of his head.
He does. I forgot about that, actually.
But there's their relationship also evolves, and I think they use the perspective of Ahriman to build that sense of unease, like as we talked about before, in terms of how Ahriman starts off worshipping Magnus almost, and believe, you know, having absolute utmost faith and belief in him. Yeah, and then increasingly he starts to question what his Primarch is doing.
But he does still do it. As well, there's still that loyalty that every Space Marine has to their Primarch. He's still willing to go along and be a part of it, even if he disagrees. When Magnus goes to warn the Emperor, it's Ahriman who's reading the book of Magnus, who's going along with it. Yep. He doesn't like it, but it's his dad. He's been told what to do, and he trusts him enough.
And I think it's really interesting as well what you just mentioned about how when the memory that was plucked from Magnus plucked the memory from Azek, because the same thing happened later in the book as well. It was Balak from the Thousand Sons. He's seen what Magnus, because it was basically when Magnus was basically in his little house or tent, whatever it was, and he spilt a lot of secrets again because he couldn't control his emotions. Yeah, and Balak actually found out, very similar to what Magnus had done, very similar to things such and such. But Magnus didn't pluck the memory from him, and he actually just killed him outright in the book.
Uthazar, when he goes to see Magnus, and then Magnus is very
emotional.
Yeah, he's very weak at this point, and Uthazar goes, "Oh shit, people are coming to kill us. We need to go and organize a defense." And Magnus just blows him,
just kills him. Yeah. So again, the stark difference. Yeah, the stark difference between that and so he definitely keeps Azek in high regard. Not so much him. I think he was the 7th or 6th fellowship guy of the book.
He was captain of the 5th fellowship.
5th. Not as good as the first one, I guess.
Not quite, but still being a captain, he's still quite high up
there, which is still massive to the story. And did anyone actually find out that Magnus killed him?
Yes, I think Ahriman and Amon, because Amon would often go and see Ahriman.
Yeah.
So would often go and see Magnus. And he had a good chat with him and a nice good speech as well about Amon, about fighting for the Legion. And he said, well, if you're not going to fight, I am. I'm not going to just let these people come to our planet and kill all of us. I'm in a fight, and I don't care what anyone has to say about it. And Magnus is trying to bring him back and say, no, this is our penance.
Yeah.
We have to suffer this. And Amon's going, we don't.
No.
Yeah.
We can kill them. We can blow them out of the sky before they even step foot on Prospero.
They literally could. They put a valiant defense against them. And just crazy what they could do. The power that they have is absolutely crazy. I think you said the other day, actually, literally how powerful this for every every 1,000 Sun member, it's like 2, maybe 3 other normal Space Marines. At one point, I forgot who it was there now, but one of the 1,000 Suns members killed 4 custodians with one ability, the telekinesis he was using, and it was just destroyed 4 of them. It was absolutely crazy.
I mean, once they really unleash their powers, there's some fantastic descriptions in there of how they kill some of these custodians or space wolves or whatever. Like there's all sorts of stuff they do. What they do, like is it one where they literally boil them?
Yeah, like boil the blood inside of them, and it causes their hearts to explode. And it's like, oh, that's horrible.
Yeah.
I never want that to happen to me.
Yeah.
Well, at one point as well, when Magnus is fighting Russ, Magnus just looks at some space wolves that are going through the water, and he just flicks his hand, and the water just turns to acid, and like 50 wolf and just die, and it's like, oh Jesus, it's like he's not even focusing on you, he's focusing on leaving Russ. He still does it.
You really got to see some of the power.
It obviously was described as like every blow was like thunderous in the sky and such, which is great, basically planet breaking effectively. But yes, no, two very good characters. Dan, what about you? Your favourites?
Ahriman is definitely my favourite character. I came into this book not knowing, obviously knowing the basic stepping stones of the lore, if you like, in terms of the heresy book. In post heresy, like in 40k, Ahriman is like something that you would frighten your children with. You good, or Ahriman's going to get you. He's one of the arch villains in 40k. He's an absolute badass. He's one of the most powerful psychers in the galaxy. So to see this much more human side of him, if you like, I really enjoyed. And he also, his kind of character arc naturally mirrors that of his Legion and his Primarch, but it's. I felt a lot more sadness for how things end for him than I did for Magnus.
Yeah, because it wasn't it wasn't no one's fault but Magnus is really. So you do feel for the 1,000 Suns being like, Magnus is standing there saying, where he had a penance or something. It's like, no, it's you. You're the issue, not us. Like, why do we have to suffer for the actions that you've taken? So very not good. But any of us or
no? That's those. I mean, he's such a huge focal point in the book. I mean, what about you?
For me, it's a bit of a change. It's not even a 1,000 Suns member, but it's Callista.
Oh yeah,
Callista. So she's referred to as a remembrance to the 1,000 Suns.
Yeah, one of the remembrances, which are like like historians or something.
Yeah, I think each remembrance is slightly different. But they're basically like historians and chronologists.
Different. They can do different things, like seeing the past or the future. So, Callista, she can actually she has the ability for what's called foresight, where she can see into the future. But for her ability, it's primarily when it's only in like immediate danger. It's not so much like just general future shenanigans. It's really when like people are about to die, or in this circumstance, or in this situation, when Prospero's about to absolutely get minced on.
Yeah.
But for the reason why she's my favorite character is I think she's got some really good moments in the book that really just stands her out, opposed to the other kind of human ones that are there. So one of the ones is that it was described in the book where I forgot what those bugs are called. Those bugs that get into the brain.
Psychonoian.
Yeah. So like there was like a passage in the book that basically says like it was like a few really high up psychers were infected with these, and basically everyone who doesn't know what they are, when they get in your brain, they basically eat your brain because they're there for the psychic ability.
They like lay eggs in your brain, and then more of them spawn and
so
eat.
Psychonoian are like psychic wasps.
Exactly.
So they lay their egg. But they can psychically lay. They're attracted to psychics, can lay their eggs in your brain, and then they're like the spawn, and when the eggs hatch, will eat you.
But like these really good psychers from the past were basically, once they got infected, they went crazy. They're like, oh my God, like I'm going to die. This is the end of me. And it's like, they're just sheer panic. Well, when she was told she was infected, she was like, oh man, this sucks. It's like,
she did really well considering.
And then Lemuel was like, oh my god, like, you have a bad head? Are you okay? And then she's like, I'm fine. Like, look, there's no better place than here, the home world of Prospero, where all the knowledge is collected. If anyone knows how to save us, it's these guys.
Yeah.
So she was very calm and just kind of kept the entire room calm. And you almost kind of felt like, oh, she's going to make it. She's going to be okay. No, she's not. She's absolutely not.
The author, there's a few occasions when the author uses her ability to really crank up the drama, because like you say, she's like forewarning of something that's about to happen, where shit's really going to go down.
100%.
And then he does that fantastic trick where he kind of, like you said, because she's almost she has such faith in the Thousand Sons, and they're enlightened, learning that they're going to save her.
Yeah,
and then it just pulls that rug out from under.
It really does. It really does. And another good moment is that she's in the middle of a battle with these bugs and such that are coming down, and she's currently she's broken a rib at this point, and then she's basically getting burned alive from one of the psychers that are there, who's obviously using what's the cult called? The Pyra, is it what it's called?
The Pyra.
Yeah. So one of those people who are there basically help them try and defend us using all these flame abilities, and she's like, can you stop? Like, it's very hot here. And he's like, oh yeah, come in my little bubble that I've got, because I think he can create a little bubble to keep himself cool. So she gets in there and she's like, I'm dying. And he's like, no, I'm dying too. We need to get out of here. And they basically bucketed out of this, because I think they were under Prospero doing a bit of research. And then when they're bucketing it out of there, they finally get back to the surface and meet again. What's his? I keep forgetting his name, man. Lemuel. I'll say it eventually. And then he's like, "Oh my god, are you okay? Do you have a bad head? Are you alright? Is everything alright?" She's like, "Look, calm down. I'm fine." And he's like, "You have a bad head?" He goes, "Of course I've got a bad head. I've just been, I've got a broken rib."
You should probably look at the other guy because he's been stabbed a few times.
Exactly. So again, just her calmness throughout the story, I think, was just unreal.
And she's a symbol of the human condition. Like how fragile and frail humanity is compared to the Marines.
But like her will to kind of stand up to her, to everyone basically, and was like, I'm fine, this is good, really stands out as a character. And she's got one of the best passages of texts that I've read in a book as well, which is her prophecy that she mentions, because near the end of her life in the book, before Prospero starts burning, Thousand Sons are like, tell you what, we need to use her ability to see what's about to happen. I think it's I forgot he's the other side, but Ahriman's there, and one of the other ones is there, to basically say, look, we're going to unplug her from these machines that are dulling her warp abilities down. So she was actually becoming the flesh. She was succumbing to the flesh change, and the Thousand Sons had her on this machine that was basically kind of like a psycho, where she was like nulling her psychic abilities down so that the flesh change didn't take effect. And they unplug her from this to basically listen to what she has to say and basically learn about what's to happen so that they can defend themselves on Prospero against the wolves. And she says this passage of text, which is, it's too late, the wolf is at the door and it hungers for blood. O throne, know the blood, the ravens, I see them too, the lost sons and the raven of blood. They cry out for salvation and knowledge, but it is denied. A brother betrayed, a brother murdered, the worst mistake for the noblest of reasons. It cannot happen, but it must. And that all reflects really what happened in the book.
Yes.
If we break that down, the wolf at the door obviously hungers for blood. We know what that is. It's the wolves coming down there to basically get them. The throne, obviously, Emperor's throne, the golden throne. And then this one's a bit strange. I mentioned this to you guys before, and kind of we're all a bit unsure on this one. But if anyone else actually knows more about this in the comments, I would love to know.
I know a little bit, but I'd definitely like to hear from people in the comments on this one.
The next bit is know the blood, the ravens. So it's almost referencing the blood ravens in this one, which apparently, Alex, do you have any more information on that one? Or
I'm not sure about that. I mean, for me, when I heard that, I was thinking, because the Space Wolves are very Nordic and such, so that obviously they follow their whole inspiration is like Odin, Thor, that sort of jazz, Vikings. So when I heard like ravens and blood, that kind of brought it back around to them for me.
Ravens have used extensively in Norse mythology as a harbinger of death.
So there's different ways to see that one.
But I did have a brief look into this, and this tiny passage in this one book started, you'll be amazed at this because 40k fans never argue online, but they started
everyone's on the same page,
an absolute flame war, because there was enough of a, it could be seen as a fairly obvious hint that the blood ravens are
descendants,
Yeah.
or what's the word?
Successor
chapter of the Thousand Sons.
And there was people that have gone down that rabbit hole and are quite convinced that's the case. And there's then subsequently been another author that didn't write this book who has said in a blog somewhere that they have seen the background lore, which we're not privy to, but obviously Games Workshop writers are, Black Library writers are. And they've said that the Blood Ravens and the Thousand Sons are not related. But that's a single comment. It's not official GW statement, so it's
I'm
not
going to
canon.
ignore that. She's wrong. I'm right. I know I'm talking about.
In the best 40k tradition, it's a grey area, and you can make your own interpretation.
I'm a YouTuber. I think I know more.
Yeah.
All right.
What's your source? Trust me, bro.
Trust me. I'm the source. All right.
But I absolutely love this shit. Like these little almost sidebars of rabbit holes where you're allowed to you're allowed to almost create your own canon in these respects, and that's how it should be. We don't need to know the actual fact of everything that's happened.
Don't need to be spoon-fed. Keep it a mystery. Let us think. Let us fill in the blanks on what we want. But the passage itself, it still moves on to the Lost Sons and the Raven of Blood. Again, that's talking about the Thousand Sons possibly going and getting transported to the planet of sorcerers at the end of the book. And a Raven of Blood, again, that one's up in the air.
Yeah. I mean, that's the most heavy hint that there's been. But there is equally, as Alex said, the other interpretation is it's drawing on that kind of Norse mythology, but make your own minds up and
let us know.
Have a civil discussion in the comments about it. Yeah.
Keep it light.
And I'll tell you why you're all wrong.
Source.
Nice. On the keyboard.
That's it. It'll be, this is my canon.
No, listening to GW's canon. But yes, and again, after that, it talks about the salvation, and it says they cry out for salvation and knowledge. Again, that's what I'm talking about, the Thousand Sons, looking for that. A brother betrayed and a brother murdered. Obviously, we know that. It's like Horus and all that sort of jazz. The worst mistake for noblest of reasons. Again, that's the Magnus breaking down the barrier.
Yep.
Which makes all sense. It cannot happen, but it must. And again, Magnus said that a lot. That's why he didn't take part in the battle. He kept saying, "No, look, this is what they want. I can't intervene."
Yeah.
By that point, after he's basically been told off his dad, he kind of it's almost it isn't. I was going to make light of it then and say he's been told off by his dad, so he's sulking. But it's almost like he finally his arrogance is stripped away, and he absolutely gets the full understanding of what he has done, and he understands that there's no coming back from that.
It's like a pit where he's like, "Oh my goodness, like what have I actually done?"
And that's
now he knows.
And so the only way he can make amends is to lose his legion basically, and his life. Really.
Not good.
So and then his legion it's quite stirring. They take it into their own hands and are like, no, we're not going to go out like that.
Yeah, which is the right way to go.
Yeah.
Right way to go. A couple more things from Callista. Again, this is why I love her so much. There's just so much about her. And when I started looking online, I was like, oh my goodness, there's like, she follows on even after this story. So, her, where obviously so at that point, she passes away after telling that prophecy and she gets cremated. Now, what happens was, when Camille again, his name Lemuel. Oh my goodness! When them two are fleeing Prospero, they get delivered an urn from Callista's romantic lover.
Yes,
and her urn basically contains a shard of Magnus.
No way.
Yeah. So later on, it's then told in another. The urn gets taken with Lemuel. Got it there. Got it first time. Everyone nailed it. Everyone's seen it. Basically, he takes that urn away, and then he gets captured by Space Wolves, and then the Space Wolves basically break the urn, and inside the urn is the shard of Magnus.
So is he captured? Because my interpretation at the end of the book was
he flees.
They fled, but then the Space Wolves showed up, and I thought, oh, that's sad. All these characters I actually quite like are just dead.
Yeah.
Because I was assuming no way Space Wolves are going to leave anyone alive.
No.
Like, I was thinking, this is it. Like, which I thought was fine. I was quite happy. I mean, if they did live, fine as well. Now I'm more interested because I want to go and figure out what's happened.
Lemuel survives and is basically escapes Prospero, but he does get captured not by Space Wolves, but by another legion. And then Space Wolves, it literally says in the law that the Space Wolves, they capture / rescue these people, and then that's when they break the urn and find the shard of Magnus.
And can you explain, Alex, a bit about these shards? That this is this like these are bits of Magnus, are they basically?
Yeah,
or bits of his essence.
So obviously at the end of this story when Magnus is picked up by Russ and broken over his
Bane
knee,
style broken.
and he sort of teleports him and the whole legion away. His soul, if you like, is sort of split up into these many different shards which go pretty much around the entire galaxy.
Yeah.
There's been parts where some of it had, like one of Magnus's shards became the first Grandmaster of the Grey Knights,
Wow.
Janus.
Right, okay. I didn't know that either, actually.
Yeah, like obviously really big thing to know. But yes, if you
huge.
didn't know it,
That's-
he is the first Grandmaster of the Grey Knights.
Is huge.
Is a part of one of his shards.
Right.
I believe it's something along those lines.
Nice.
But most of the shards seem to have different parts of him.
Like
It's almost
personality-wise,
yeah,
is it?
kind of like different personalities as different traits. Like one of the shards, I think, is called like the Crimson King, which
Right.
is obviously Magnus's moniker.
Yeah.
That's more like his destructive power, and more. I think they were probably the more dominant shards in him, in a sense, which is why he's been a bit more destructive. But the whole quest, if you want, for the Thousand Sons after Prospero was to try and collect these shards and bring Magnus back
like,
and
full
get their
strength.
father back together.
Class.
Is he back up to full strength, or?
I'm trying to think. I think there's maybe one not, maybe one or two, but it's been a while since I've read some of that sort of stuff. So it could be that at some point he's gotten them all back together now.
It depends what edition of 40k you play. In 9th edition, he definitely didn't have all his shards.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
just think it's really good to compare against, obviously, the Necron Catans. Obviously, they are split into shards.
They're
'cause
shards,
they were physical.
Star Gods,
but
yeah.
Again, Magnus being split into shards as well.
Yeah, it
Very
kind of
similar.
fits. Yeah,
Very similar stuff.
kind of tracks.
Never even thought about that.
Yeah.
So in terms of, we talked about favourite characters. What about the way the author told the story? We touched a little bit on the pacing in part one, but was there anything else that you particularly liked or disliked, Alex, in terms of the way he told the story?
No, I found it quite good. Like we've went over quite a few times now. At the beginning, it is quite slow. You've got to get through it. There's a lot to introduce the reader to how the Thousand Sons sort of work, who these people are, the different captains, the fellowships, the cults. But other than that, like, I was quite enjoying it. I liked the different point of views. It was really nice to see the almost 3 steps of people, where you've got like Lemuel and all the remembrances are those nice human elements, which I've found when I've read some books, the human characters can often be some of the best ones, best point of view, because you really get to see the power and sort of the almost awe of these space marines. They become these mythical figures almost, whereas when it's all from a space marine point of view, you get it a couple of times in this book. They're very straightforward, to the point. They do what they need to do.
They're all on the same playing level, so to them, this is all normal behavior and normal stuff.
Yeah, and the book is quite good in that respect, because it shows you how the humans venerate or the Space Marines, and then how the Space Marines venerate Magnus and the Primarchs as well. So you get that kind of those different perspectives.
Definitely.
I think the sections aside, I think that there's a lot going on in this book. So you've got the kind of discovery period in part one. The bit I actually enjoyed the most was the Council of Nicaea, or the trial of Magnus the Red, because it's quite subtle. There's a lot going on there, and it does feel very much like the pivot of the book, which way the fates are going to hang. And I found that the way that was written really interesting. I also loved the way, like, as it opens up on that, and you've got these accusations from the Space Wolves, and I'm like, oh no, here we go. And I'm thinking, this is going to turn in, if we're not careful, this is going to turn into like a courtroom drama type thing. The author has this, but he has this great trick where it's kind of a trick. It obviously fits in with the overall narrative arc as well, but the way he avoids us having to listen to all the testimony of all these accusers is that Ahriman collapses, basically. Magnus lets his guard slip and kind of reveals himself to Ahriman, and Ahriman can't absorb that, because he can't absorb all of that at once, and he collapses. By the time he wakes up, all the testimony's done. So from the accusers, so like, that was quite a handy trick.
We got to see all the important ones. Like, we got to see Mortarion talk and give his point of view, which I really liked. Actually, I was like, Mortarion's making a lot of really, really good points. I was like, oh god, this is going to be tough to come back from. And then you get to see the horrible bastard that is Othia Weirdmake from the Space Wolves, who essentially turns around to backstab the Thousand Sons by going, "Oh, hey, you've told me all your secrets. I know that you're basically
Ahriman
sorcerers."
trusted him as well.
He really does the dirty on Ahriman. And that section of the book when Magnus tells this parable about these guys that live in the cave, and one of them goes out and seeks the light, so he comes back and gets the others to they all live happily ever after. That's a perversion of that parable. Like what happens in the real parable is he comes back and tells these two guys about the light, and they basically beat him to death. Because they're happy where they are.
Yeah, he goes outside and sees the sun for the first time after being stuck in a cave for their entire life. Is like, holy shit, this is amazing. My mates need to see it. Goes back into the cave. They don't want to go out, so he goes outside, digs so that the sun can come into the cave, thinking, well, if they see it, then they're gonna enjoy it. They're gonna
force them to see it. They'll have to acknowledge it.
And they'll be like, this is amazing. And where Magnus says they saw it, they loved him, they heaped praise upon him, and they became better. The actual story, like you were saying, is he shows them it. They get scared shitless. They beat him to death, and they run further into the cave.
Yes, and this is.
I think it's really good to talk about later, though, because we're going to be discussing ourselves which parts we like about the book.
Yes,
so
you're
I think
right.
I'll more deal about that later, which I think we'll get into. But the book itself, from my perspective, I think it was a really good pacing. I say pacing wise, I think the start of the book was very slow, and then as the book went on, it was like a snowball effect where it was going downhill, and it was just picking up and picking up and picking up. And for me, again, very briefly, what you mentioned before about how Ahriman kind of passed out. That's why I think it is practically Ahriman's book, because it was almost told from his perspective about what he's seen and what was happening.
You could have had like Magnus there, and it could have just kept going and going, but instead it was like, no, this is Ahriman. Like, we'll skip all of this, wait until Ahriman's back up, and then we can keep going again.
Definitely.
The author uses, as we touched on before, Ahriman's perspective to criticize, to kind of show that the Imperium is deeply flawed, the Emperor is deeply flawed, the path that they're on is almost going to lead inevitable to some sort of a civil war. And that opens the door for chaos.
Yeah.
So
very nice.
He uses a lot of foreshadowing, a lot of foreboding, a lot of dramatic irony. Like, there's a lot of times the characters are talking about something, and we know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I honestly think it was written really well. There are some pacing issues at the beginning.
Definitely.
But that aside, it's a cracking book. It's very well written.
Very nice. Perfect. Well, what we'll do is a short break here now, and then we'll come back and talk about the rest of the book from there. Well, welcome back, everyone. We're looking at talking about our favourite story points in these books. And Dan, do you want to start off?
Yeah, so I'm picking a slightly different part of the book. So I almost stole some of Alex's thunder before, but we both really enjoy the Council of Nicaea, so we'll come back to that in a minute. But one of the other parts of the book, which I briefly touched on before, that I really liked and I would like to have seen fleshed out more, was the attack on Shrike, which is this is the last planet in a system that has resisted Imperial rule and and is fighting against the Great Crusade.
Yeah,
and these people, we only kind of get glimpses of them, but it seems that they've got a very sophisticated society. They're clearly very capable, because it takes the 3 legions that are involved in the battle to take Shrike. There's the Word Bearers and the Space Wolves, and then also obviously the Thousand Sons.
Right.
And it gives us very much the author's views on the Imperium in this section, which is that it's an inherently bad system. It's very authoritarian, it's very cynical, and it's already almost, it's like, to me, maybe it's my interpretation of it, but it felt like he was he's trying to say to us that it's almost already a rotten system before the Horus Heresy happens, before the Civil War. It's deeply flawed, but also there's something tangibly wrong about it. So that kind of, this, as we talked before, the Horus Heresy as an arc is a tragedy. The Thousand Sons story, this book is very much a tragedy. And Shrike was also within that is another example of a tragedy, because it's almost of what could have been. Like, this is a very affluent, prosperous system around Shrike with it that's very advanced, and all of that is completely razed and replaced with the Imperium.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed that aspect of it, and this is also where the Space Wolves and the Thousand Sons really butt heads in terms of the clash of their ethos and cultures.
Yeah.
So the you see this through Ahriman's eyes very much. Like he would have liked, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there's a point even when these guys like surrender and the Space Wolves are just like, no, just keep going.
Just keep on going. Yeah, because that's what we mentioned before. But that's their order, isn't it? They only know like, oh, my father has told me to do this. Yeah. I'm going to do it regardless of what evolves as the day goes on. Really,
it's quite fanatical, and the word bearers, we don't see them in the same light, but they are. We know that there's hints of it in this book. They're very fundamentalist in terms of doctrine as well. Yeah. But the Space Wolves are very fanatical, and to them it's very black and white. Yeah. You're either with us or against us, and if you're against us, we will remove you, eliminate you.
I think they throw off some of the like high-ranking people. They literally throw them off the top of like the mountain to the floor, and it's like, oh, bloody hell! It's like not just kill them, just really, really show them that you lads are wrong.
Like, you're not. Yeah. Like, this is ours now.
It's brutal, and it does fit with the Space Wolves sort of ethos and how we're meant to perceive them. But we see through the author and then through Ahriman's eyes about how some of it is wholly unnecessary.
Yeah.
And also, is it really the right thing to do in terms of destroying these people's cultures? Is it not something that we could absorb from their culture into ours? So there's an awful lot in very small passages of that book. There's an awful lot going on. There's lots of themes in there, which the book is as long as it needs to be, perhaps, but there is almost a separate book in the Fall of Shrike. I think from the perspective of the people that live there. Yeah. I'd love to know more about it.
Yeah.
So for that reason, that's why it's one of my favourite parts of the book and passages, is because there's so much going on there, and it really left me wanting more, which is always a good sign in my.
Yeah, it's a very strange point as well, because you mentioned before about like how the wolves are there to basically to do a job, but the Thousand Sons are almost there to be like, well, this is a part of history. It'd be good to know what happened prior to them basically finding this planet, and then kind of developing.
How have they got to this point?
Yeah, Space Wolves are almost like, well, before the Imperium took over this world, none of that matters.
Yeah.
Like, the only thing that matters now is you're under the Emperor, you're going to be moving forward with us. And it's like, just getting rid of history, isn't it?
It is. It's like a 20th century sort of Stalinist approach. That there's like memes you've seen where Stalin literally took people out of photographs that he'd eliminated.
Erasing history.
Yeah, it's a complete erasure of that history and culture. And the fact that you see the Thousand Sons wanting to kind of protect that so that they can learn from it. And, it was a really fascinating moment for me.
Mm-hmm. Really interesting.
And there's a lot of, you touched on this before, there's some other stuff going on in that passage in terms of the conflict between the Space Wolves. We've got the transformation as well of the
Thousand Sons legionaries.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's, that's kind of the you can already tell that they don't like each other. We see Space Wolves on Ogoru who are coming to get Magnus and his legion and go, hey, we've got a job to do. Like, and you're being really slow. This world's done. But then on Shrike, we get that conflict. We get Space Wolves going up against Thousand Sons. It's described as like the unstoppable force versus the immovable object when they do eventually clash, which was really cool to see. I mean, I remember reading it thinking like, Space Wolves like coming at them.
Yeah.
Like they've got like, I'm sure, blades and stuff. I was like, is this going to happen?
yeah. Like a bit shocked that he's actually getting this fall.
Yeah, kind of thing. I suppose for them, like you were saying, they're very black and white. Like, I don't think they would have killed the Thousand Sons, but they were certainly willing to go through them.
Yeah, because to them, the Thousand Sons would be in the way, so then they'd be justified to be like, oh well, look, Russ, look, we were sent here to do this. They got in the way, and Russ would probably be like, oh, that's fine. Like, he didn't seem to care.
I think you get that sense from how the Thousand Sons see that whole incident as well. Is they're almost like, what's the word I'm looking for? Disbelief. They're in disbelief.
Yeah.
Are they really going to come and kill us over this issue of defending the library?
Yeah.
Actually, I think they are.
Yeah.
And it's one of those points where I felt very much I was siding with the Thousand Sons over the loyalists, or what becomes the loyalists.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and you see that little hint of sort of their power corrupting them there as well with the Thousand Sons. Obviously, they start to like, they're using the kind shields to kind of stop them moving forward, and then they're starting to like they boil the blood of some of them as well. And it's like
that's a big difference there.
You're trying to stop them from attacking. Okay, I kind of understand it. And then they keep going and going. And
it's like the shields I understand, but when they start boiling the blood, it's like,
and Ahriman's essentially going, you're going to kill them. You need to stop. Like, this doesn't happen. Like, it shouldn't happen. And obviously that ends up leading to one of the Legionnaires succumbing to the flesh change, which then makes all the other Thousand Sons worry a lot because they're starting to almost feel it. And obviously you get Russ coming in and he just pops this one Legionnaire. And Magnus shows up, and it's like, oh, this is even worse.
There's a real standoff there where, and it builds quite nicely to sort of prefaces what actually happens in the final conflict between those two, because it could have happened on that bridge, but it doesn't. But the tension's palpable, isn't it? It's like it's right. They're a hair's breadth away from going at each other.
They were just looking for a reason, weren't they? They were just like, well, give me a reason to go crazy here. And
but in that respect, maybe Magnus did something right, because he's almost kind of the peacemaker in that. He's like,
he's very calm.
Yeah.
Well, you had Logar show up as well, didn't he? He was the one who teleported between the two, really.
Yes, that's true.
And essentially was like, hey, what are you doing? We're brothers. We're meant to be helping each other. We've got a job to do.
Yeah.
Like, don't let this sort of rubbish get between you.
Which was the right call.
Yes, I mean, he is the ultimate peacemaker. But Magnus is almost like, again, coming back to like that force and an object thing. He's very much the immovable object. So he's like, I won't strike the first blow, but I'm not moving out of your way.
Yeah.
You come at me, bro.
Pretty much. Yeah.
So that's as I said. There's so much going on in that small passage. It's really dense, really rich, really exciting. Really well written. So I love it. I think. I've changed my mind now. That is my favourite part. It's not Nike at all.
That's fair.
But we'll get to Nike in a minute. First up, your favourite?
My favourite, it's briefly mentioned it before, but I've got to go when Magnus is bashing through the barrier into Terra. It's just the way it's written, and obviously the build-up to it, and even like the part afterwards, I thought it was really well written across the board. Because obviously this basically starts like 17 chapters ago, basically, of obviously the build up to this moment. He initially wanted to use this new technique of projecting himself elsewhere to go speak to Horus. That was the whole idea. So he went to go speak to Horus, then he found out Horus is already gone. I'm like, I've spoke to Horus. Horus is already gone. I can't retrieve him. Right, what's the next thing? I'm going to tell my dad. I'm going to tell my dad that my son's my brother's being
telling our dad on you.
Yeah, exactly.
What a grass.
Exactly, right?
No one likes a grass.
1,000 sons, 1,000 grasses.
Absolutely. Exactly. So basically, he's building up the power. He's using all the Cabal. Is it Cabal? Is that what they're called? Is referred to as?
I mean, they're the different fellowships of the 1,000 Sons at the point. I think they become the Cabal like later on.
Got you. So basically, Magnus is using all of the psychic power that he has within his legion, and it doesn't actually tell a lot of people actually do that, because Callista and all the humans are a bit confused on why.
I think it's just the captains really of the fellowships he tells, and then obviously he gets a bunch of like it seems like almost psychic humans as well, or people who are a much lower rank in 1,000 Sons, and he draws the energy from them, which obviously ends up killing
a lot of
pretty
them.
much all of them, actually. I think
it's pretty brutal.
It's your first real dive into how far he's willing to go for what he believes is right.
Exactly. So he gathers all these people up to basically use their power to basically protect himself across the warp, and it takes them like 3 or 4 days for him to actually get himself to Terra using this method. And so for those 3 or 4 days, there was captains that we just talked about, they had to stand there, no food, no water, no rest, because they were channeling their energy to Magnus to make him do it. And even when he got there, he couldn't get past down the barrier. And he started breaking down. He's like, oh my God, I've killed hundreds of people, as we just said, to get to this point, and he's still not able to get past it.
He's almost gone that far that he was willing to do anything to carry on.
Exactly. And that's when he makes the foolish decision to be like, can anyone help? He starts calling out into the warp to be like, look, is anyone there? Can anyone help? And
it's mad when you think about it, because we've had all of these encounters, or this talk earlier on from Ahriman in particular about these obviously these creatures that lurk in the warp.
Don't trust them.
And then he's just like, hello, is anyone there? Can you help me?
I need a boost. I need a boost bar. Has everyone got any food? Any pick me ups?
It's but it's that whole scene. There's a word that gets overused, it's exactly right for this passage. It's epic. That whole section is epic.
It's just contained with so much information. But then so he calls out, he gets the information, so he gets the power, and it's literally it's almost briefed over in the book. It's literally like, oh yeah, look, there's a warp entity there. Oh, they seem good. They've got no bad intentions. They don't want anything for giving this power. And because it's obviously it's not implied or anything like that it's Tzeentch, but we outside of the book know that this is the god of change, right? It's the god of change.
It's the god of it's very much a case of that dramatic irony where the reader knows much more than Magnus does.
Exactly. But he gets this power, he breaks through the barrier, and this is the part that I absolutely love. So he breaks past the barrier, makes his way through the Imperium, whatever, and he gets to the Webway project. Because he starts learning all what's going on because he's broken down. He can obviously sense it all. He can see it all. And he steps or he pushes himself through the Webway project and all the alarms start going. All this stuff that the Emperor's been doing for the last God knows how many years. All these really incredible circuits and such that he's basically just broken in an instant. Yeah. Everyone starts fleeing from that area. Everyone who's been working on the Webway project and who's underground starts fleeing. And the only ones who obviously don't are the custodians. They stand vigilant straight away and start to basically defend themselves. But all these people don't see who this person is.
Yes.
Because the way it's described is that he's covered in eldritch fire. He steps through the portal and he's covered in eyes all along his body. So no one knows who he is. To them, it almost looks like a demon.
Yeah.
But
looks like a demon to me.
it sounds like a demon, exactly.
Yeah.
But the Emperor sees it for who he is, and the Emperor is just like, oh, Magnus, what have you done? Like you've literally destroyed it all. And then at that moment, Magnus then knows. He's like, oh no. He goes, I've completely fucked up.
Yeah.
Like this is, I know, I can now sense because I think they have a psychic connection between the Emperor.
Yes, I don't think
Magnus.
they actually speak any words. I think it's all just done psychically because, I mean, it's the Emperor and Magnus. It's probably like nothing for them.
Yeah. And it can happen a lot faster as well.
Oh, yeah.
In the brain. So, yeah, they have that psychic link. He basically tells them what the plan was. He finds out, or one way or another. And Magnus is like, oh my God, like I had such an important role in my father's plan.
Yes.
And I've completely ruined it.
Yes.
It's destroyed. And then what that basically means is that this barrier that was basically there, it was put in place to stop all these demons from basically coming in. So when Magnus at that point gets, I think the Emperor kicks him back to his form, his physical form. So he gets kicked back.
He eats him all the way back across the galaxy to Prospero. Yeah.
Yep. So he gets back into his body, and then he's sitting there and he's like, I don't know what's happening over there now, but he can only think that like, demons are running through the portal, and that's when that, the whole, it's not described in the book, but what's actually happening back on Terra is the custodians are there for like a weeks on end battle.
I think essentially from that point on, it's a really, it is a really important moment because Magnus at that point on is basically gimped the Emperor out of the Horus Heresy until the Battle of Terra.
Yeah.
Because at that point now, demons are flooding through the Webway, or through whatever warp Terra is now in Terra, and you've got custodians and the Emperor and anyone else who's on Terra fighting this war. I think it like kills a majority of the custodians or something that fighting, like you said, weeks or however long it is on end, and the Emperor is using all of his psychic might to try and fix it.
Yes, it kind of it forces those powers to focus on fixing that problem and enables Horus to then to do what
to
Horus
focus
does.
In the physical world and such. Yeah. So that section to me was just unreal because at that point Magnus then knew that he goes, no matter what I do, I am now basically going to be breaking the Imperium. And I'm already in trouble.
He's done it and it's unfixable, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's broken and he can't fix it.
So that's why from that point onwards, Magnus doesn't really do much more else in the book, really.
He's broken as well. I think it strips away all of his kind of pride and preconceptions of and he's left under no illusions that he's completely messed this up. Yeah, and there is no salvation.
Nah, not at all.
It's that he's a broken. Say he's not a man. He's a broken Primarch. Yeah, isn't he?
Because I think he thinks that no matter what decision he makes now, it's already been made.
Yeah.
And he's like, if I
path
attack,
set, isn't it?
Path set, exactly right. So that was my one. I think that was amazing. It set up the rest of the story, and it kind of gives you the justification of why Magnus, did he do anything wrong? It's like, well, yeah, he did, but it was for the best intentions.
Yes, exactly.
Going back to the prophecy.
That's kind of the tragedy. But you touched on this before in terms of the snowball of at this point you're so involved and engaged in that story. It's a phenomenal.
It was like IKEA was the Council of IKEA was the push, and now it's like this little snowball effect's building and building.
Yes.
So that was my one. It had to be that one.
Great choice.
Very
and last but definitely not least.
Yes.
Well, for me, it's we were saying it before, but it's got to be just that Council of Nicaea. As soon as they mentioned it in the book as someone who knows at least a bit more about the law, I knew how important Nicaea was, but I hadn't heard a lot about what actually went on, specifically. So as soon as they mentioned, oh, we're going to this world, Nikea, and I was like, ooh, is that the one?
I was going to talk about this because there's bits in this book, and this one's one of the main ones where I feel like that meme of what's it called, the actor.
Leonardo DiCaprio.
Where he's going like
Yeah.
that.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was like. I don't know.
Like, Ullenor's like a little flavour, like, oh, they're going to Ullenor, I know. And then Nikea, like, I know this.
Yeah. I remember as well, because I think I was discussing, like, doing like this obviously book review, and then I think we mentioned it, and I asked you, like, what book do you want to do? And you were like, I might do this one, and then you were like, they're going to IKEA. We've got to go there, we've got to do it.
Like, that was a point that, like, I was really enjoying the book kind of a bit after Agora. Towards the end of Agora, I was getting a bit more into it. And I enjoyed Shrike. Like you said, I kind of wish it had lasted maybe a bit longer because it was quite interesting. Ullenor was very brief for what it was. It was maybe like a chapter, maybe 2.
It was almost like they're leaving, they see a glimpse of it and it's there for a reason, but it's almost like they're leaving that to other books. Like some other books
this isn't
that.
your story. The main point is the Emperor's going away and yous are left with it.
What is it that you loved about the whole trial of Magnus the Red?
It was just this, there was almost this mystery about it for me going into it. I'd spent quite a while really trying to not look into a lot of it as well. Obviously, we were doing this and I was like, right, I'm going to try and not look at any external sources. I'm going to try and not look at anything else. I'm going to just save myself for this part of the book. So going in, we were mentioning, you were mentioning before about, I really hope it's not going to be like this back and forth court casey kind of bit.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have bothered me because I was so into it at that point. It could have literally spent like half the book in Nikea and I would have been quite happy. Honestly, I was all for it. When Ahriman passed out, I actually got a bit sad because I was like, I kind of want to see what all these other arguments were, because you had, Mortarion, who was a big, like, he
player,
really
right?
was going against it. He's not a fan of Psychers at all. I don't think he has any in his legion prior to them going over to Chaos. So he comes out and I'm thinking, all right, what's he going to be like? And he makes some very good points about how people think they can control things, how they think they use words like it's for the good of everyone and all this, but actually it's just people kind of ignoring the dangers. And I was like, ooh,
it's a valid point, to be fair.
He is that's part of the tragedy of it. He is actually right.
Because the untamed psychic in the 40k universe is just crazy.
Yes.
People explode left, right, and center. Like 1,000 Suns people actually explode as well.
Well, it brought about, like, I think the big thing was it was like the Tale of Night or something like that. It was a really, really old event that cut off the pre-Imperium, which is why everyone was really bad against Psychers, because obviously it was due to them that, like, worlds got overrun by demons.
Which is a fair argument.
They get
as
the
well.
whole blame for humanity, like collapse or Age of Darkness, if you like. Whatever they call it, the Age of Night or something, don't they?
It's something along them lines. But yeah, we get obviously Mortarion's point of view, and the other big point of view we get is a Othio Weirdmake, who's a space wolf librarian, because he is a librarian. He's not a rune priest.
Oh, you sure me?
Bollock's name. But he's essentially a space wolf librarian who originally Magnus had told Ahriman to sort of take him in a bit and to talk to him, and maybe they can foster something between the legions.
He actually approaches in book 1. He kind of befriends. He's the one that instigates that friendship. Like Weirdmake approaches Ahriman and kind of fosters that friendship. And to start with, you feel I had quite positive views towards Othio until he stands up.
Like I was, when I obviously first started talking to the 1,000 Suns member, I was a bit surprised because obviously I knew going into this book, I was like, well, 1,000 Suns dislike Space Wolves and vice versa. So when they were talking, I was like, is this gonna be one of those like nice friendships where like their brothers in arms go against each other, but them two are like,
it's like a contrast to their wider theme.
Exactly. But them two are gonna be like, well, we're friends, we're not gonna fight. But then it was the complete opposite. They were like, that guy, he's a psycho, he's a warlock.
He literally like came to the council, could have been there for like ages and ages talking, but he didn't. He very much stuck to being a space wolf, very direct, very forward. I don't need to speak much. All I say is true. There's 1,000 Sons of sorcerers. I've seen their sorcery firsthand. They're going to get people killed, essentially, is what he's saying, and they shouldn't be doing it.
And again, like, the points that he made weren't like made up. They were factual, and they were to an extent correct. What he saw was danger, basically.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's annoying that he's right because he is a psycho. Yeah, but, so there's a massive amount of hypocrisy there.
Mm-hmm.
But also, he kind of makes it. It's like manifest destiny. They kind of make it right because of they force the Thousand Sons into this corner.
Yeah,
and that's it kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy to some extent.
Yeah, it is.
But it's
I like you're still trying to think like,
Yeah.
oh, can I argue this?
I was
Can
like,
I?
no, that's pretty fair, yeah.
yeah. What else about Nike did you enjoy then?
So obviously, I like that bit. You know, the arguments against were good. I was almost expecting it to be more just like, I don't like it, which some of it is, but a lot of it is really, really good points. I remember thinking, how is Magnus going to come up against this? Because it was basically just him for like the first half of his defense. Like it was just him
They were
alone.
waiting for people to come out, weren't they? Because obviously in this courtroom, everyone was like held behind this like veil so that no one knew who each other were.
Yeah.
And then Magnus even called out, being like, "You're all hiding behind this veil, giving your opinions. I want to see who's doing it." And then Malcador, the sigil, was like, "Well, no, that's there in case you don't intimidate people," which I kind of get. You know, Primarch staring at you, I think I'd poop my kegs.
Yeah.
But when Magnus steps forward, it's just this. I remember, like, before he stepped forward, it might sound a bit cheesy. I almost like took my breath and I was like, right, let's get comfy because this is going to be something. Like, he's got to make a really good point, and he does. He's, it's described in the book when he starts talking. Magnus knows how to give a speech.
Yeah.
He's obviously, you could say he's researched almost how to do it. He's almost putting on a play for everyone there. Almost, you could maybe say an act, or you could say he's just trying to get the words out in the best way.
Yeah.
He deliberately picks a less combative strategy. So his opponents have been pointing fingers. You said, been very direct, extremely accusatory. Like, you're a sorcerer, you're a witch, whatever you want to say. And he takes a different view, doesn't he? He's much more conciliatory. Like, well, come on now, people. Let's think about this rationally.
Yeah. What we're using is a tool, not a weapon. It's a tool to help progress our work.
That enables him to be, use the full force of his knowledge, and also his charisma, I think, comes across there.
He's got a lot more charisma than Space Wolves.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? It's,
he can, when he gives his speech, his little story about the men in the cave, by the end of the story, he's looking up at the sky, and people are following him. And right at the end, when he gives the story, his version of the story anyway, not the actual one, everyone starts like applauding him and such. And you've got to think there, like, oh yeah, you must be thinking, I've got everyone in the palm of my hands. Yeah, how does this go anywhere else?
Yeah.
And then after that, you've got a couple librarians as well who show up, which I really liked.
A couple of big ones,
yeah. It was like some of the librarians from a few of the legions. I'm pretty sure
Ultramarines, Salamanders, some really big ones.
The main one is a white scar who comes forward, and he's basically, they're going, hey, look, these librarians, they can be an issue, but we're dealing with it. If you take this away, you're taking away a tool that we can use.
Yeah, he very much portrays it as like, there's another tool in warfare, and we need all the tools we can get to.
Isn't it? And I think they also mentioned that, like, obviously this currently we know what's going on, and the teachings that we're discovering help us control these abilities, where if we completely ban and stop practicing this tool, it's like, well, look, all this untamed information will go lost, and it'll just we're back to square one, where everyone goes rampant and issues occur. So I think it was a very good point, and again, it was very nice to see that they had some backing, because I think it was all the build-up was like, no one's helping, no one's there for them. It's just Magnus versus everyone, and then eventually people do come out, and it was quite nice to see. And
then obviously at the end, you get the Emperor giving his edict at the very end, where he basically says, there's no longer going to be any librarians in any of the legions, and anyone who does use psychic powers that isn't, an astropath or navigate any of that type of stuff, they will be my enemy, and I will bring down the full force of the Imperium on them.
I mean, there is no beating about the bush here. It is absolutely as clear as day. He couldn't have used clearer language to say, "Thou shalt not."
It's like, don't dabble. It's like, no.
It's a commandment from God.
Yeah. It effectively is, basically, yeah. So he was very strict on saying, look, no. And again, this is where, like, obviously the background knowledge of the 40k universe kind of comes in, but we kind of understand why he didn't say anything. But at the same time, I reckon he should have just informed people of what he was possibly working on to stop, obviously, what occurred on Terra with the barrier.
He's deeply flawed, but I was going to ask you why, you know, Alex, why do you think the Emperor goes that way when he's obviously, you know, a large amount of the success of the Great Crusade and the rebuilding of humanity in the Imperium is through psychic powers, through psykers? It seemed to me like, not knowing as much of the lore as you do, it felt to me like, you know, I didn't really fully understand why he comes down on that side.
Yeah, I mean, I think it mentions it in the book a bit. It's a little bit smaller, but it's some of the other brothers, like Mortarion and Russ are kind of some of the main ones. I think maybe Angron as well. But they're not a fan of, obviously, psychers in general.
Yeah.
It really worries them. They think it's going to be bad and it's not going to be helpful for the future, which is why the Emperor brings forth this council, because it's meant to be a way for everyone to air their differences out. And then he's going to have to make some sort of a decision on it. I think he ultimately does know it has to be one way or the other. He can't really 50-50 this. He can't go, well, just do a little bit less. Like, you know, stop using your powers to, like, you know, lift up a cup of tea or something, or to clean your guns. Like, only use it in these circumstances. If he does that, he kind of messes up both sides.
Yeah.
I did wonder, I'm sure there's a passage in there where he kind of, it felt to me like it's almost the Emperor hinting at the fact that he knew that Magnus had already gone a bit too far.
Yeah, because he did go too far, didn't he? Obviously, you know, took the deal with Cinch to stop, obviously, the flesh change. So it's always implied that the Emperor knows everything.
I think the Emperor, like, hints at, you know, I've warned my sons not to go into, like, go into these areas of the warp, and he's fairly sure that they've not listened, and he means Magnus, basically, doesn't he?
Yeah, but I think he does have I'm sure Magnus has, like, a chat or something again psychically with the Emperor at Nicaea, where it's almost like a why, like, how come this is brought about? Like, you know, this is a trial. This isn't a talk. This isn't a discussion. I am on trial, and my entire legion is on trial for doing what we're bred to do.
Yeah.
And the Emperor is basically going, well, I don't really have a choice. Like, it's kind of been brought about by you, but also I have to, you know, you've got all these brothers as well. Their voices need to be heard.
Yeah, it's that greater. You know, keep saying it. I know it's the Tau's, like, motto, but it is that greater. You know, it's the Emperor has to weigh in favor of the greater good, I suppose.
Yeah,
but it does. It felt like
a slap in the face.
It does feel like it just felt like a decision that I wasn't expecting him to make, or I didn't fully understand why he made it.
Yeah, for me, it felt like the decision was already made prior to him even coming there.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the underlying.
It's like
sort
a show
of feeling
trial,
of it.
isn't it?
Yeah, it's a showy trial. It's Magnus's last attempt to keep his legion what they are, and ultimately,
Kangaroo Court.
I mean, I would almost argue that he won that. To be fair, you know, he gained a lot of people's support of it.
That's how it comes across. You're right. You're absolutely right in the writing. He wins them over with his arguments, and it still goes against him because it's almost like you say, it's preordained. Isn't it?
Yeah.
Decided before. This is just a formality. It's to rubber stamp it.
Yeah.
So that's a great choice. I think with three really good iconic passages of the book. Hopefully those have whetted your appetite in terms of looking at those. So let's move on then and look at the next question. I'd like to ask you is: did this book make you want to read more about the Thousand Sons or the heresy in general? I mean, you're well ahead of us on this, I think.
Yeah.
A little bit. There's still quite a bit that I do want to read. I've been really tempted to read the other side of this one, Prospero Burns. I don't want to because it's going to focus on the Space Wolves, and I've come to really hate them in this book.
Yeah, sorry, Space Wolves player at home, but yeah, we're not fans of you at the minute. So
I don't care. I'm not. But yeah, like, it would be interesting to see their side of it. I'd probably be gritting my teeth most of the book, especially towards the end.
Yeah.
But
They come across as deeply unlikable in this book. It's really hard for me to see how they would redeem them in Prospero Burns, to give their side of the story in a way that made
like,
us
what's their
sympathise with them.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously the actions that we see, again, this book could be well biased in terms of the conversations that they had with them. But the one thing that I'm going back to is, when they were in the library and it was burning, and we had that 1,000 Suns person protecting the library, and they were like, where's Ahriman? We're here to kill him, and I'm gonna kill you, so just tell me where he is. And it was just like, well, look, that conversation sounds very one-sided in terms of, well, these space wolves look like the enemy, but in the grand scheme of things, they're the loyalist. And there's no point in this book to me that screams, this is chaos. 1,000 Suns are inherently bad because they're chaos, but none of that screams out to me.
It's very much, this book is very much, I think, about those kind of shades of grey, nuances, bad decisions, etc. And I think that is something that I took away from this book, and I would like to see continued in the rest of the Horus Heresy when I read it, is that there is no sense here that the Imperium is a force for, or overwhelmingly a force for good. It's a force. It's powerful,
Definitely is,
but it isn't necessarily creating. It's certainly not creating a utopia.
it brings an order to a planet, whether or not you like the order or not. That doesn't really matter. You will listen to this.
But there's so much Horus Heresy. One of the reasons I've always stayed back from it is it's such an enormous series. I mean, it ran for nearly 20 years or something.
I think there's something ridiculous, like 80 books.
Yeah,
there's some absolute mad lad has created like a diagram that's got all the books, including like the order to read them if you wanted.
That's always
it's
nice.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Like in depth, there's so much stuff out there.
It's just like overwhelming. Like the obvious ones are the beginning books, like Horus Rises, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But past that, it just spreads out massively. Horus Heresy.
There's an awful lot of the Thousand Suns lore that I didn't know, and in the same way as with this book, like it's a bit like learning history at school. You learn kind of like dates and events. So I knew about Ulinor, I knew about Nicaea, but this book added such a richness and to that knowledge, and also the experience of reading it was great. And that's made me want to learn more about the Thousand Suns. And it's made me less frightened of trying to dive into more of the Horus Heresy. It is big. There is 80, what do you say, 70 or 80 books or something?
It's something ridiculous.
But I am,
that.
I'll take my time, but I'm very keen to learn more about it.
Yeah, like I mean, I was nervous going into this book because, again, it was book 13. And I was like, oh, God, well, can we really pick it up
Is it
from
not
here?
book 12? Is it book 13?
Book 13, yeah.
Right.
And I was like, is this can we really pick it up from here? Is this good to read? Or should we start from number 1 kind of thing? And I feel like, that we've dove straight in, and I've not had any issues. Like, I know what's kind of happening. I feel like I didn't know anything about the lore of 40k. And in a way, if you don't know the lore of 40k, this book is maybe even more interesting to be like, well, who's this demon? Oh, what's this? What's his voice giving more power?
Yes.
What deals has he made? What more don't I know? And then when I was looking up this book for obviously my interesting characters, and I obviously came across Callista, I was like, she's linked off to so many other books, like so many other situations in the grand scheme of things. I was going down a rabbit hole, being like, "Wait, I'm looking at the Blood Ravens now. Like, what's going on? There's so much stuff connected." So I think this is overall. I think it's a really good book. To be fair, really good starting point.
I think I'm definitely interested in learning some more of the lore. What about you, Alex? Is it because you're obviously already balls deep in the Thousand Suns lore?
Just a little bit. It made me. Reading this, like I said, I do kind of want to go and read Prospero Burns so I can see that spatial point of view. I'm sure it's got some really good points in it, and it'll be interesting, even if I am gritting my teeth and swearing at them the whole time. But it's also made me want to go and read more, like the Ahriman trilogy or omnibus. Like, I'm really interested in that now. There's bits of that I already know, and there's parts I don't, so I really want to get my teeth into it and just go and learn more. It got us really interested. Like they're fascinating to me, the Thousand Suns, the Legion.
Well, it's one of the questions very similar to that, where I messaged you being like, "Oh, mate, they're being described as red. Like, how come the Thousand Suns are red? I thought, because I thought they were blue." And then you were like, hold on, this is because of the follow-on book, right?
Yeah, so there's an awful lot more to go at there, and I think for those of you, if there's any of you out there who are like me or Jack, who are taking our first steps into the Horus Heresy, don't be intimidated by the size of it. Some of these books will work very well individually, but they'll also really whet your appetite to go and find out more. I've really got a hunger to learn more, read more of the Heresy now.
Yeah,
and I I think the other thing is, like you said, is there are themes or characters within it that you can focus on rather than having to read the whole thing.
Yeah.
You know, if you like Thousand Suns, read this one. Read the Ahriman. It's a trilogy, is it, or two? I think.
I think there's a trilogy of Ahriman books.
There's certainly more Ahriman books.
I really want to read those books. I mean, I really wanted to find out the ins and outs on why they went from red to blue.
And how does Ahriman go from being this almost good side of Magnus in a sense,
to being like Magnus's conscience, isn't he?
Yeah, to sort of being the villain that he will become.
And I mean the shards as well. Like, who's collecting the shards? How did they get them? Where they went?
I think it's fair to say that even though this book is like the fall of the Thousand Suns, there's more tragedy to come, isn't there? In terms of the tragedy never stops.
It just gets so much worse for them. They lose their home world. They'll lose basically 90% of their legion. They're going to lose. Like there's more downhill.
There's more downside to come.
Well, it's like that thing. It's like in this book, it's kept on referring to, like, there are no, like, what's the word? There are no randomness in this book. It's all
there's no
made coincidences.
Yeah.
And one of the things at the end, which I mentioned to you before, was when they get teleported off of Prospero and they go to the planet of the sorcerers. It's like 142,000. It was like 1,242 thousand suns that get taken away.
Yes.
And if you add those numbers up, that equals 9, which is Zincha's number.
Yes.
So
and it's divisible by 9 as well.
It is.
Which is, again, if that's deliberate.
Yeah.
It must be.
Yeah, then that's
well, because there's no coincidences in this book, is there?
He drops some fairly heavy hints about that. Magnus talks a lot about it, like finding these geometric shapes in nature and things like that when the statue shatters and stuff like that.
A lot of 9s that popping up. There's the 9... the 9 fellowships, which are all based off of the people who first took these strange shards on the floor and wielded psychic powers for the first time.
Was the 9 shards in the
I think he split in the 9 shards.
I think
shards.
Yes, that was it.
When he's going to talk to the Emperor, he's gone for 9 days.
Yep.
When
he's talking to the glass and there's like 9 eyes staring at him as well. It's just popping up all the time.
So I'm going to do the world's cheesiest segue here and say, in terms of number 9, would you give this book 9 out of 10?
Ooh,
it is
what a segue.
I feel like I've got to now, actually, because there are no coincidences.
I feel like that would be the perfect number to give it. I think towards the beginning it drops a bit, but it just absolutely got me. Like, sort of that third to halfway. I was just totally hooked every day, wanting to read more and more. So, I mean, it would be like sort of a 9 for me. Like I said, that beginning bit could have been just a little bit better. Maybe it could have gone a bit quicker. I had to go back and read it a couple of times just to make sure I was remembering some of their names.
Yes.
But yeah, it's a solid like 9, a must read for me.
Yeah.
Good.
What about you?
You know what? Although I do want to give it a 9 just because it's all coincidences. But no, I think for me it's got to be an 8, and I think that's still a really good score. But you really briefly mentioned it before. It took me a very long time to get into this book. You know, it took me like 4 or 5 chapters to really kind of get my teeth into it, start remembering what's kind of happening, and that snowball effect. Once it started rolling, I was hooked. I had to know what happened. I actually want to go back and listen to the ending bit again of the Burning of Prospero because it was such a good storytelling.
It's phenomenal.
It was really good. But yeah, it's got to be an 8 just because of the starting bit was a bit slow.
This was one of the highlights of the series when it came out. I think it was the first one to make the New York Times bestseller list. Like, it was incredibly popular for a reason. It's a very good book. I'm also going to give it an 8 for the same reason, as there are pacing issues and the world building is too dense at the beginning. It's just too much. Yeah. Occasionally, and I'm being hypercritical here, but occasionally some of the dialogue is a bit clunky, and it's because some of the rest of the dialogue is so good. Like the whole Council of Nicaea the dialogue's phenomenal. Magnus talking to this flying snake in the cave, it's a bit clunky. It felt a bit sort of 80s sword and sorcery. Like, you know, and that's the only reason why I'm knocking it down from a 9 to an 8.
Yeah.
But I'm absolutely delighted that we picked this one as our first book club. Go and read it, and
especially if you're a Thousand Suns fan as well.
It's a must.
It's a must if you like the Thousand Suns or you're interested about them. It's an absolute must read.
Yeah,
it's going to get you hooked, guaranteed.
And for you, how would you last thoughts?
You know, no last thoughts. I think again, just it was very slow beginning. It was really good ending. It's again made me want to read more. And I'm not a Thousand Suns fan or anything like that, but I feel like I am now. I just want to know more about what Ahriman's going to do next. The shards, again, I'm more interested like how the shards resemble the Necron Ctans being split. It's like, oh, well, this is interesting, like, because the shards of Necrons can get mixed together or added together. So I want to see what happens with Magnus.
Yeah, I felt the same before this book. I had very little interest in the lore of the Thousand Suns because I hate them and I hate playing Alex because he in all of his sorcerer's tricks on the battlefield. But it's a cracking book. Definitely dive into it and give it a go. Let us know what you think about it in the comments. This is the first Black Library Book Club. If you like this one, we'll be in touch on our social media channels to tell you what the next book will be, and then you can kind of read along with us. And then we'll kind of encapsulate your thoughts as well as ours in the next book club review. So thanks very much for joining us. Please like and subscribe. Leave plenty of comments, but keep it civil, guys. And let us know what you thought about this. Which book should we do next? And we look forward to hearing from you. But thanks for joining us.
Massive thanks for Alex for joining on my first episode as well.
Thank you, Alex.
That's no bother. Just some quick closing thoughts. Magnus did nothing wrong.